the meeting tomorrow with,
Yes,
yeah.
we'll do. All right, we got the magic eyeball. Here we go. And here we are for another episode of Dualistic Unity Raw. We did not have a Sunday episode this week because, frankly, I was sick. I was not doing well. I was going through the human experience and not really complaining about it, just more or less going through it. Still got a little bit, going through my system at the moment, but it really does make you appreciate a few things. One, when you're not going through that shit, that's nice. I've had a long period of not going through sickness. That's been great. Two, my body's innate ability to just heal. If I just take care of it, rest, get the fuck out the way, stop being so goddamn stubborn about getting my task list done, right? If I just let it do its thing, it actually does inform me. It's like, hey, I'm thirsty. Hey, I'm tired. Hey, we've got the sweats. Perhaps you should do something about that, that kind of thing. And it really is just a matter of awareness. But so much of my previous health problems came down to the fact that I just wasn't listening to my body. And I wasn't listening to my body because I didn't recognize that it's me, which is funny. I thought of it as my body, like I'm in a car, which is kind of funny. But I am that car. And it's in not paying attention to it that it starts to deteriorate, to a greater degree. It starts to feel ignored, as it were, as I would if I was ignoring a whole part of me. And I am. Right. And so it's really important to recognize that mind body dichotomy that we all talk about. There's the mind and the body. And if you're really fucked, you'll toss in the spirit. It just doesn't exist. It's just not there. The place that you're looking for, the feeling that you're looking for, the connection you're looking for lies outside of thinking about all those things. It lies in what you are right now, which is all of it. You are the mind and body and the reality that it is within. You're all of it. It's just when you think about it, you immediately become a very small part. And I think that genuinely gets in the way of our healing. I think that so long as we are subjectively dividing ourselves from the rest of ourselves, it really is cutting down our ability to grow and to heal and to expand because we're cutting off our own potential willingly. It's like, oh, I'm going to walk down the street. Let me just saw this leg off first. And why? Because somehow I think that if I don't, I'm not being fucking productive.
Yeah, it's like we're all of it besides the conceptual idea that we hold on to, right? Like it's such an interesting thing, like the process of letting go of that conceptual idea. Like there's so many things that we think we are, and then we're like, oh, I don't think that I'm that. Like, oh, I'm not, I'm not my body, I'm not my thoughts. And it's like, no, you're all of them, and you're never what you think. But you're also never what you think. Like it's everything but the thing that you think you are. So anything that you think you are isn't you, but everything else is. And so that realization that no, you are you. And we've talked about this before with the non-duality teacher approach, like, oh, there's no me sense, energetic contractions, vibrational, whatever fucking shit. It's just avoidance. And like you're you. Like the you that you are is the you that you are. It just doesn't, it's not that you're not also everything else, but it's just the conceptual ideas that divide that. I'm just this versus that. And so there's like an avoidance of the idea that then creates an avoidance of all the other things. And so it's very interesting to recognize that and realize that, because there's a responsibility that comes with that. The letting go of the conceptual idea, and so much of that is perpetuated by our opinion, by our preference, and by our shit. Like, holy Christ, dude, I have had a fucking, I don't even know what word, I can't use a word to describe it. Like fucking weird, interesting, freeing, uncomfortable as fuck. Like last 4 days. I think it's
Cathartic.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And it's been in process for months, years, my entire life. The build and the letting go, but at least the most recent thing I think started with that last Being High episode when I was like just going through all different sorts of things, and it was so interesting because I was in conversations and last week and at the last retreat and on that episode and in just like talking to a family member. Even there was like constant noise. Like I couldn't hear people. I could not hear people talking because I was so, it was like a constant what do I say next? How do I respond to this? How am I doing? Like constant, just like to the point that I could barely even like do anything. It was
That's life for a lot of people, man.
oh my gosh. And it was a feeling that I felt when when I was younger. Like I couldn't see things. I couldn't interact because there was and it's like the wall of you essentially, and the concern, the fear, the worry, the thought that, oh, what I say is going to matter a ton. And it's not that it doesn't matter, but like I put so much weight on, it's almost a, I don't know the word, like thinking about yourself so much, like in the sense of the impact that you have on things, like, oh, what I say is gonna, impact this person, dictates this person's life. And so I have a bunch of things. I don't even know anything exactly. I know there's a lot of shit in my head right now, but the the idea, and there it went, but the idea the idea that what you say and do, oh, there it is. What you say and do, and the way that you interact with people, they they're constantly thinking about you. And it's fucked, but it's also necessary to think that if you think that your idea is true and you think about yourself all the time. And so I had a really it was actually after that last being high episode, because I took two gummies. It was only, they were 5 milligrams each, but like I'll tone down the gummies, I think, on those episodes, because that gets a little much on a
Yeah,
podcast.
that was fun.
Yeah.
Admittedly, that was a lot of fun, but the conversation was very good,
Yeah.
and it really did get deep towards the end, especially. And so, anybody who hasn't seen that yet, episode 4 of Being High, it's online now. Go check it out. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but the oh fuck, there it goes again. Uh the afterwards, it was the realization. Oh shit, it went away. But it's so interesting just how much we think that people are thinking about us, and that whatever that thought was will come back. But so I was seeing, oh yeah, yeah. So I was seeing after that episode, I was like, I had a full on trip after that episode, like 4 hours. And it was uncomfortable as shit. There was a lot of shit that came up that was like, it was almost like there's things you can't see, or like things you avoid seeing but subtly see, and then you don't want to look any further, so you don't. And that kind of goes hand in hand with degrees of suffering. And you can come up with all sorts of excuses and tell yourself things to comfortably avoid certain things. But I was, it was like I was seeing myself from a million different points of view, and none of them were the assumption I had of myself. It was like all of these doors opened up, and they weren't comfortable. They were like, and not negative things. And I think it's important when you see those things not to like feel bad about them. It's just recognize them. And another thing I realized was self-judgment is a fucking avoidance pattern. It's a fucking way to avoid change. You can judge yourself and then not change. It's an excuse to avoid yourself. Like that one was like, oh shit, I judge myself a lot. I am avoiding a lot of change. Fuck. And it was just like,
It's
wait,
comfortable though.
oh, so comfortable and familiar. Holy shit, dude. And so I saw that, but then I was seeing that, like, myself from different points of view, in the sense of like seeing from different eyes, and how I'm always myself. I'm always, quote unquote, with myself and myself doing my thing. And I was like, driving across the country the last couple days, and I was thinking about myself for a bit, or certain things came up. I'm like, and then it hit me like, no one else is thinking about me right now at all. But for me to get overly concerned, I must think that other people are thinking about me different ways. But I was seeing, myself, whether it was like going into a gas station or something, and seeing gas station attendant, like that person that I see, the people I interact with, like I don't necessarily think about them after my interaction ends with them, or consider them. And that's the same thing that happens with you. And how quickly, like there was one instance where I noticed someone doing something, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing to do. And I wanted to, I was almost aware of how long I kept that thought in my head. And it was like 10 seconds. And then 10 minutes later, I was like, oh, that thing I wanted to remember, noticing and keeping track of. And I couldn't even remember what the thing I saw was at that point. That's how quick it was in and out of my awareness. And that's me for everyone else. And so it was like, it's like the most freeing thing in the fucking world that you're just, and I made some video, like you're just the scenery, but you're also like, obviously it runs deeper because you're not just you, but the you that you think you are is just this sort of fleeting thing. And so you take that, you sit in that enough, and it's like, oh, so I'm not, that idea isn't even it. And it's like there's nothing left to think about necessarily when you're realizing that. Like, in the sense that, like, the last, I don't know, a couple months, every night before bed, there was shit going through my head. Last night, there was nothing I could settle upon because I knew that it wasn't anything. And I'm saying this now, feeling better and whatnot. I know I'm gonna go back into shit to deal with other things, and I got, yeah, and more, whatever things to let go. But it was just, and I have more, but I'll stop there.
It's interesting because the reason this is so difficult for people to get is because what's implied by what you're saying. You're like, oh yeah, we're just scenery to people, and anybody who needs to feel important to someone else is terrified of that thought. What do you mean people aren't thinking about me? What do you mean people aren't judging me? What do you mean people aren't evaluating me? What do you mean, people aren't envying me? Right? We really want to think that we're the focus of attention for a lot of people in a lot of ways, because the alternative is that it's on us, that we have to define our value, that we have to define our own potential, that we actually have to be responsible for what we are moment to moment to moment. Whereas everybody else just thinks of me in a certain way, then I'm that. Question answered.
Oh man, it's so and I know I discount that side of it, like how much people rely upon that, but it's a fucking double-edged sword. Like, if you're relying on anyone else, it's gonna be brutal. And that one was huge too. And we were kind of talking about that last week, just like, in any given moment, your experience comes down to you. Like, it's always on you, which is, and I know we talked, I think, more in private about that, but the recognition that you can, it's like, it's only as hard as you want it to be, almost. Like, it's not to say that shit doesn't come up and things don't get difficult, but it doesn't have to be difficult. Like, it can be easier. You don't have to give so much weight to your opinion, your perception, all of those things. And I told Ray, when he told me that, I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't love that. Like, that, there's a part, and it's not to say that I don't, but like, there was a part of me that was like, I kind of want it to be tough. I want there to be a journey. I want there to be me in process. I don't want it to just be me here now, willing to, you know, dance on the shit. I want there to be this process, because that is means that, like, Andrew's still there in a sense, and that there's still a story. Like, if there's a journey, there's a story, and there's a familiarity to that. There's a strange kind of fucked up comfort to always be striving for something, to be in process. Oh, I'm in process. I'm becoming something. I think Michelle Obama even wrote a book called Becoming or something like that. I'm like, what a fucking farce that is. But like, that whole
That's the
thing of,
Baha'i thing. That's
really?
actually what the Baha'i faith calls themselves. We are becoming. And my response to that was, that's adorable. And they did not appreciate that.
Oh man. Because it's like walking on a treadmill thinking you're getting somewhere. Oh man, that's brutal.
Well, yeah, but the alternative is changing. If I'm becoming, then I don't have to just be. Right? I'll get there eventually. Because that whole thing is,
Mm.
we really want change to take a long period of time, because it takes off the pressure. Right? I'll change over time. I'll get that. eventually. One day I'll stop judging myself. Why
Oh,
not now? I mean, that's really the whole thing. That's all you got is right now.
that's all you got. So there couldn't be couldn't be a journey. Like there we could perceive one, and that's because that the whole all of psychological suffering is the idea of there being a journey, the avoidance of you being able to change or at least, you know, drop something
Well, that's a good
or
question, right? I think it really comes down to the fact that, yeah, I mean, really, let's just talk about it this way: like the spectrum from feeling defeated in life to feeling free really is both like the perception of a journey, but that perception changing. Like when you think the journey is too long and you can't do it, you're in hell, right? When you think the journey's getting shorter and you're having an easy time, you're getting closer and closer to just letting it go, because that's the end of the journey, is to recognize that there never was one. There never was one. That you are already what you want to be, right? But then you have to deal with all of the reasons that you don't want to accept that, and you'll hear them. But but this, but that, I'm still not perfect. I'm still not. People are still upset with me. It's like, oh, those sound like expectations. Those sound like ideas of what you think you should be, and that's the shit that's getting in your way. See, just listen to yourself when you actually accept you are already enough. You're already it. This is it. Immediately your brain's like, but, and that's all the shit that you have to stop believing is truth. It's right in front of you. Immediately your own objections are your prison.
and they're so familiar and there is a comfort in that. Like there's a sick twisted comfort in my entire story as to why I'm not enough right now. The things I gotta change. And even now, it's been interesting, like the last couple months, because I re-listened actually to it was Raw 65.
You
It was
mentioned
the one, yeah. And holy fuck, like that whole thing. And I noticed in the thumbnails, like I was reading the thumbnails and like the words I put as we were doing the Apple subscription thing. By the way, gonna have Apple subscriptions for ad-free listening. Anyone who's
it's
interested.
available
Oh,
now.
it's available now?
It's available now. Not all of the episodes have been converted into ad-free listening. We have all the raw episodes, all the social episodes, and all the way through seasons 1 and 2, and partially through season 3. The rest of the episodes will also have ad-free listening within the week. So you can jump on there for a monthly fee, and you never have to listen to these annoying little ads that interrupt our conversation. Just
Fuck
kidding.
yeah.
We love those ads. Thanks. Thank you, ads, for helping to keep this party boat going. That's really what DU is. I'm noticing that this is just a ship that we're all putting time and energy into. It's just something that's out there floating on the ocean of possibilities, as it were, and we're all just kind of like enjoying the conversation on the deck. But we're provisioning that ship. We're making it so that way we can continue to travel around and meet new people and run across other ships that are out there, doing their own thing. Because that's really all this is that we're in this together. And none of our conversations in this society really look at it that way unless we identify in a certain way. That's the only thing that binds us together, is that we identify the same way. And that is the most fucking terrible bullshit. And it's just because we're always in this together. Till you think about it. Till you think about it, it's pretty fucking obvious.
Like it's just our conceptual ideas. Like that there's an entire world of conceptual ideas, and without those, it just is like the any of the deeper recognitions become very obvious when you're willing to question your narrative about things, your opinion of things, your judgment about things, and are willing to look at the root of that not being true, not being objective truth. Like your opinion isn't objective truth. And it seems obvious when you say it like that, but how quick we are to think like, oh no, it well it could, and we'll like I'll argue it And I'll be like, well, it could be the truth. It's like, yeah, it could be, but is there a benefit to focusing on it? Like, is there a benefit to being right about it? It's like, well, yeah, because then I'm right, and then I'm better, and then I'm more, and then I'm more important. It's like, oh goodness, and so I understand. I guess I'm gaining a understanding for the investment in that, but the simultaneous cost as well, because there is that the
That's the point, is the fact that you're looking at the simultaneous cost. And that is something we don't often do. This is why my life coaching business was called Transcendence. It was simply because you can't find the solution that you're looking for while you're still invested in the strategy. See, because you won't see the consequence as long as you're invested in the strategy. As long as you think control works, you will never look at the consequences of control as being associated with that control. You'll always go like, no, control works. Why am I a victim all the time? Right? And it's like, no, those are the repercussions of your need to have control. No, they're not tied together. Why would you say that? Well, because I really like control. And that's really what it is. That's really what it is. It's not until you're willing to look at the fact that the flame is burning you that you stop fucking touching it. Right? But most of the time, we're so overcommitted to the benefit of whatever strategy we're doing, whether it's control, whether it's identity, whether it's comparison. We're so caught up in it that we don't look at the consequence, because to do so means we have to question everything we're doing and start from scratch.
and that can be uncomfortable as shit. And so people will just avoid that. And so and even gosh, and we'll just avoid the personal consequence of maintaining that control. Like, even so, just a number of things in our society, like our people's aversion to just take like dancing, for example, like or singing or fucking just expressing yourself freely. Like, there is a massive aversion to that. I've had a massive aversion to that for a long time, for a very long time. And so, in order to not have so much of an aversion to that, I have to veil myself. I have to numb myself. I have to actually fucking cut myself off from reality to do any of those things. So, you go to karaoke, it's a little easier after a beer or two. After 10, oh, you're up there fucking screaming your heart out. Crushing the dance floor, all that stuff. And it reminds me, I think I've brought up this example before of like in middle school, you had like a middle school dance or something. And there was always like, there was no booze at a middle school dance. And so at first everyone was a little, hesitant. By the end, everyone was jumping around, sweating. People had, going crazy, having a blast. And there was like a shift at some point that people just got more comfortable, kind of like that video of How to Start a Movement, when no one's dancing, one guy goes in and dances by himself for a little while. Finally, one other person joins, a few more people, a few more people, a few more people. It shifts from, it's uncomfortable to be the one dancing to it's uncomfortable to not be the one dancing. And I think that's all this is. Like, that's all this conversation is. And the beauty is that you're it. I'm it. And so as you change, it changes. And it's not to say that it changes like that, but at the same time, it's like it is playing out. And if you're actually living for you, the change and the speed and the rate of change is kind of irrelevant, because you're free in yourself doing your thing, and that's it. Like, there isn't so much of a focus on anyone else doing any other thing. But it's so interesting how those aversions, like I didn't want to look at my aversions to things, and so I would just avoid them. But I'm finally at a point, the last kind of my whole life, but the last couple years at least, more and more willing to look at my aversions of things and see them and face them. And like, it's uncomfortable as fuck to then almost see it play out in over the span of, I don't know, maybe a couple months, a couple weeks, and like, almost re-experiencing where the aversion came from, and then being able to let it go. And it's like, it's fucked how looking back at things, you can see it, and when you're going through it, you can't at all, and you're fucking, like, completely, it's like you're veiled from experience, not fully, and I'm not saying that it's and, the last 4 months or whatever that I've been completely veiled, but there's been moments of clarity for sure, but then coming out, it's like, coming out of it, and that's even funny, assuming that there was anything, like, I've been here the whole time just with different things, but then you see, "Oh, I don't have to be so averse to that. I can do that. There isn't the cost. There isn't your assumption about what's happening isn't what's happening, but you have to go through it. I had to go through it to see it. And then it's playing out, and it's not that you have to do something active to let it go. It's like, it's just that you don't have to run from it. Like, your willingness to not grab on to previous tools is it playing out. Previous things, avoidance tactics, patterns, things that, identity-based things to reinforce a positive idea as I was going. It's like, "Oh, you're feeling bad about this, just think positive, just be grateful, just do all this shit." And that's an avoidance of where that's coming from. You're not facing the thing that it's coming from. And so when you aren't grabbing onto those things anymore, it's not to say that it gets comfortable, but then it continues to play out, continues to play out, continues to play out. And then it is like you almost come out of a fucking dark pit, cave, whatever. And then like, oh shit, there was a lot in the way there. Like, just for example, like telling jokes. Like, anyone who's been to a retreat, holy fuck, I don't think I've ever told a joke in my life. And I realized that more recently. It's like, why is there an aversion? Well, I don't think I'm funny. I told myself that for a while. That was
Hard to
another
be funny if you're not
story.
telling jokes.
Yeah, right. And yeah, and so then I was like, wait a second, like, I I don't have that. That is just an assumption. That is just a comfortable, familiar assumption. And then it was like yesterday in the car, I just stopped telling myself that. I don't even remember what it was. It's kind of, it doesn't really matter. But it was went hand in hand with like the scenery recognition. Like, I'm like a fleeting, passing by thing, and so I can be there isn't so many reasons to be afraid of putting yourself out there. Or, if you start telling a joke and like forget it halfway through, like, laugh at that. Laugh at that. It's like, it's irrelevant to someone. Like, no one else is going to think about that for more than um, like, almost at
Unless
all.
they really want to, and that's not about you.
Exactly. And when they do, it's them, like, seeing that, like the scenery thing, noticing that or realizing that, and then thinking like, okay, if someone does think about me for a while, it's like, that's funny. That's funny in itself. If someone continues to think about you, it's like, I got a lot of real estate in that mind of yours. I've set up shop. I've built a home there. That's interesting, but that's on you to look at. Why do you
Exactly.
keep focusing on someone else?
See, just know your intention. It's really it. It's just we like making things complicated. We think that somehow if I know exactly how everything's going and everybody perceives me and what's going to happen, then I'm going to be happy. It's like, nope, never happened. It's not working yet. You've been trying it this whole fucking time, and you're still coming to this conversation looking for a way out. So just question all that shit. We have a question here. I want to get to it very quickly. I've tried adopting your way of thinking for a few months now. That immediately makes me suspicious, and it makes me feel at peace in my day-to-day living. Good. I'm glad to hear that. But I find it hard to live a compelling life without feeling the need to pursue a meaningful goal or dream. How can I feel like my goals are meaningful while also being completely at peace with myself and at the present moment. I'm going to make this real easy. Your goals are fucking meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. None of them have any meaning or purpose whatsoever about you as a person. And if your goals come back to you as a person, that's your problem. What are your goals and why? Is it about you gaining more value? Is it about you being perceived a certain way? You having a certain level of control? You having a certain lifestyle? You having what you think you want? Is that your goal? Because that means your goal is just to be self-absorbed. Your goal is to continue to think about you, which means you're going to continue to experience that lack. Now, that said, does that mean you can't pick a direction? No, pick a direction. But why? Why are you picking the direction? If it's coming from lack, question that shit, because you're going to lose energy. You're going to go in circles and come back to this feeling of being defeated, like you're not enough, blah, 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 because you still think that there's something you can do to be more. Once you've gotten rid of all of that, you can choose any goal you want, any goal. And it's not about you, which means that it actually has teeth. It actually has roots. It has a foundation. And you can grow it because it means something more than some petty need to feel more validated.
Yeah, because the thinking about yourself is arguably the biggest energy suck ever, like ever. And so setting a goal, constantly thinking about yourself as you're doing it, is going to make it so much more difficult to do anything. Like literally anything is so much more difficult when you're thinking about yourself. And so, if you really, really want to write down some goals or whatever, like go for it. But if you're waking up every day thinking about the goals, thinking about what it means about you, thinking about yourself, continuing to do so, it's like you're cutting your potential down so much. Like not even half, like 1% of what could be. And there's no adequate measurement of that, obviously, but it is arguably the biggest energy suck you can have, is to constantly think about yourself. And guess what? You're the only one doing it. You get to that goal. And so this is something else that kind of hit me was, and it relates to goals. You set a goal. It's like, why are you setting that goal? Is it for you? Is it really for you? Like, yes. Is it? Is it actually for you? If you were on an island by yourself, would you still set that goal? If yes, cool, go for it. If no, look at that, wonder about it, because then it's not fucking for you. If you're thinking, you're. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with someone talking about how they like getting dressed up. It's for me. It makes me happy. Okay, you go to dinner by yourself in a fucking white room
At home.
at home, exactly. And no one else is there cooking for yourself, doing whatever. You're still gonna wear that, that super fancy outfit or dress or whatever it is. It's like if the answer is no, you're not fucking doing it for you. You are not doing that shit for you if you are alone and you won't do the same thing. If you are entirely alone, you won't do the same shit. It's the same thing with the needs conversation. If you're alone on an island, like what do you actually need? It's like very basic shit. Other things aren't needs then. These goals, and so it's so important if you actually want to be free in yourself to to look at that, to be willing to look at that, because you get to that goal, you achieve that goal. No one gives a fuck. No one fucking cares if you achieve your goals. No one cares if you get to that spot in your life. They're going to see it happen. They're going to see it on their fucking Facebook feed. Oh, this person accomplished this. This person achieved that. This person, blah, 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 blah. I'm hungry. I got to go get some lunch. Gone. Like that. It's so fleeting. You to everyone else are so fleeting. The things that you do, the things that you achieve, like, and so it's so vital to live for you. And there's things, little things like that, like imagining you're alone on an island. It's like if you don't have the same goals with that, if you don't live the same way, like I'm not saying change everything about your life, but just be willing to look at it. Just be willing to face that, because it will benefit your experience, because as long as you're living for someone else, there's no spot that you get to. There's no journey. There's no trajectory. There's no space where everything is amazing unless you're living for you. Because no one cares about you accomplishing anything, really. I mean, some people might, I guess, but like even then, even like someone who's really, really, really close to you, it's like they're still focused on them, their life, their experience almost all the time. Even, a partner, a spouse, a father, a son, a close friend. Like, you keep them in mind time to time, like check in with them. But like, how often do you think about anyone else? And it can be uncomfortable to realize that no one really cares that much about what you do, what you achieve. But at the same time, it's so freeing because they don't really care if you don't accomplish those things. If you fail, if you step out of your comfort zone, do something that's really fucking uncomfortable, fall on your face, there are going to be people maybe who do judge, but it's like, look at them, their experience. Like, and put yourself in their shoes. Like, if you're looking at someone judging them, it's clear that they're suffering so much. But yeah, it's important to keep those things in mind. I think it'll shift the way you live.
I think so. I think you touched there a lot on why I do this. As you know, I have my own reasons for having this conversation, and I have since we started this. And it's largely because it's so very difficult for people who are trying to be more in themselves to have the clarity to actually care. And it's not that they don't, it's just that they're so afraid and so caught up that whatever care or love actually comes through is diminished by how much they're trying to protect themselves from the world that they see as separate. And so it's not that the people in our life don't care about us, it's that there's so little room left to see us because they can't see themselves. They're just desperately looking around, just frantically trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. And there's no sense of peace for them to actually express the love that is there. And it is there because we talk about love all the time. And the reality of love is not the idea of love. The reality of love is simply what is. Love is the acceptance of what is without precondition. Right. And so once you just accept your what is, you're not trying to be anything, you really have no need of your own. And so you're left looking around at the rest of you. And you're left looking at how much of you is still, wrestling with that fog, being lost, hurting itself. And so you actually do start to care. And you care because you care about yourself. You're not caring about them at all. Right? There's just that there's no idea of you in the way. There's no idea of you in the way. You're not trying to care for another person because you are not thinking about yourself separate from that person. You are simply embodying care. And that is why I do this, because I actually care. I really do about everyone we talk to and everyone who's listening to this. I care, not because I have any ambition for you, not because I want anything for you, but because you're as important to you as I am to me, and thus you are as important to me. Because I have no reason to focus simply on this one part of me. It's already whole and complete. And so it's easy to see people because I'm not looking for anything. It's easy to see what we're going through because I'm involved with it. I'm not trying to get out of it. And change is everything. And so to me, this is all about just being and recognizing that's all you need to do to truly care about others is just to allow yourself to be what you are.
And I think to to someone who doesn't understand like true faith and the willingness to let go or whatever, they because that realization that just being yourself and allowing people to play out is requires a lot of faith. Like, if you don't have faith, you're gonna try and tell people things with an intention to change them in a way that you think is best. Because all we have when we think an action is right or wrong or correct or incorrect is a comfortable assumption, a false certainty that doesn't exist. Like that getting someone into the place that you think is best for them, telling someone something with an intention for them to understand it is a massive assumption that allows you to feel like you're doing well, that you're doing the right thing, that you're doing the correct thing, and then you feel good about yourself. And I was having I talked to a number of a few friends just on my drive the last couple of days, and I was uh I was realizing just that I can just pay attention, I can just be involved, like just be involved without thinking about myself and my response or how I'm gonna say something or the right thing to say. And I was just there. And it wasn't that I was doing it in order to have a better conversation or in order to whatever. It was just I wasn't in the way, and that was it. And then it was, let's see what happens. But it wasn't for an intention. And I think that's even something I'm realizing now was can easily get in the way. Like, oh, I'm not going to think about myself. So this goes better. So I say clearer things or so that blah, 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 blah. It was like, no, it's just, you don't have to think about yourself. See what happens. Like, that's it. It's just
Repeat, rinse and repeat. Correct.
It's like yourself out of the way because that's just a familiar assumption that you keep going back to over and over. Exist, be, blah, 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 whatever.
You mean I don't need to like know about resonance and frequencies and fifth dimensions and the intergalactic fucking battle between heaven and hell? I don't need to know all this spiritual mumbo jumbo. I don't need to, and that's all it is. It's like, but then what? It's like, well, find out.
Find fucking out. Like that. Oh God, it's like frustratingly simple to
Yes, it is. That's a good way of
yeah.
putting it. I know it's so funny because at some point, very, very shortly, we're going to have to go and start doing a commentary series on our original season 1 and season 2 because it's just been long enough now. Hell, we're coming up to our 2-year anniversary of starting Dualistic Unity on September 28th. It's going to be 2 years since Dualistic Unity was born. So I think that might be a good time to go back and revisit because frankly, this is the conversation we've been having since the beginning. I've been talking about this exactly like this since the beginning. The only difference is how much fog was in the middle. The only difference is how much we were just like, no, it can't be that simple. That's all that's changed over the years for me. Over the last 20 years, it's just been over and over going, oh, fuck, right. I'm making it complicated. That's really what it is. Just over and over. Ah, oh, fuck, right. I'm doing it again. And that's it. And then immediately it's like, do I want to judge myself for that? Why would I do that? I'm doing it again. And so finally, I've just gotten to a point now where it's kind of just keep it light. Just keep it light. And the rest takes care of itself. And this is why I say every mushroom trip for me. And this, I find it so funny because again, I don't do psychedelics anymore. I don't fucking have to. And when I do, I always end up in the exact same place. There's not this giant climb through my shit to come to a moment of clarity anymore. It's just like, oh, right, I'm still here. Carry on, shut up. And that's pretty much it. Just carry on. And when I say shut up, I mean try not to get too lost in your preferences. So just try not to get too lost in your opinions and everything will work out just fine. I find that to be the funniest goddamn and yet most profound lesson in my life. Just relax. Just relax. And people are like, what, like physically? So I need to meditate more? No. That's not relaxing. You're still looking for something. You're still trying to figure out what you need to do. That's not relaxing. You're still putting in effort. Relax. Relax your mind. Relax your soul. Relax. Stop trying to be something other than what you are. Breathe. Feel the seat underneath your ass. Feel the fucking ground underneath your feet. Feel the air around you. This is it. This is it. Right here. How often are you here? How much time do you spend being present? Because that's going to determine how sensitive you are to your own fucking potential. But if only every once in a while you allow yourself to be quiet enough to be yourself and then immediately like, well, I got to think about something. I got to be on the path. I want to get back here. Then you're not giving yourself a chance to actually just get used to being you. You're giving yourself a chance to continue to try to be you. And that's something you've been doing this whole fucking time. Just relax.
Because it can be so comfortably familiar to be going somewhere, getting somewhere, like being on the correct path. That's just your fucking opinion. Like, and that's such a massive part is like, do I have an opinion of this right now? Do I have a preference that's coming up? Do I have an opinion of this experience right now? Because my opinion is going to get in the way. It's going to reinforce myself. And it's going to make it way more difficult to do anything at all if I have an opinion. Even if I have an opinion about having an opinion, it's like it can come in so many different ways, shapes, and forms, and then judging yourself. And the self-judgment one is, oh gosh, that's been I'm not judging myself for how much I fucking judge myself, but it's funny to recognize and seeing it as like, oh, that's uncomfortable to realize that it's another fucking avoidance tactic.
Yes and no. So
Okay.
there is that one side of it. Yes, it's an avoidance tactic that your brain is going to play on its own regardless.
Yeah.
That's really it. Like your brain's a comparison machine. It's not to it. It doesn't look at it as avoidance. It looks at it as what it's supposed to do. Right. And so part of that is judgment. As long as identity is in there, discernment becomes judgment. Without identity, it's just discernment. And so that's really what's undercutting all of that habitual judgment is the fact that you think it's about you. There is no you for it to be about. In which case the brain's just like, oh, okay, so I can just compare attributes. I can go, that's taller and shorter and, thinner and bigger. And it's like, yeah, you can do that without it meaning that I'm somehow less or more for being taller or shorter or bigger or thinner. Right? But it all comes down to identity and our belief in it. As long as we believe in identity, our thoughts fucking revolve around that shit like it's real.
Yeah, I got into it a little bit with a friend who we are talking about good and bad, and we're not arguing necessarily, but discussing. And I was like, I keep those conversations so much lighter than I was smiling and kind of like laughing the whole time, not laughing at him necessarily, but just like kind of smiling and it was just so interesting how, there were examples brought up like, oh, you're driving from one location to another right now. That must mean you think that's good. It's like, no, it's just what I'm doing. It doesn't have to be a good thing to do it. You can do things without having an opinion of it being a good thing. And eventually it got like we kind of finished off with him saying like it makes me feel more comfortable to think that I'm doing good things, doing the right thing, on the right path. And I was like, yeah, and with that comes constant measurement, constant judgment, constant checking in. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this good? Is this bad? Is this good? Is this bad? It's like, oh man, that's gonna cut down your potential a lot because you're thinking about yourself. Like it's always relative to yourself. As long as you have an opinion, as long as you think something's good or bad, it's relative to you and it's reinforcing that conceptual idea the whole time. When you can't judge something, have an opinion if you're not thinking as much. Like if you're not focused on that noise, taking it as truth. It's really, really hard to settle upon any concrete opinion about yourself, about how things are going, about how you're doing. But there's a familiar comfort in that. But it cuts you down because you're focused on that. Like I don't think I realized how much attention can be on that. Like so much, almost all of it can be on that. And like you're straight up not living, you're not existing. But the alternative is letting go and feeling like, oh, I'm uncertain. I don't have control anymore. I don't have a grip on the situation at hand. And that's unfamiliar. Doesn't mean that's uncomfortable. It doesn't mean it's something to be avoided, something to be learned, be tested out, be lived in, and just trying it out. It's because it's different. It is different than what I'm used to, not checking in all the time, being free from that because there isn't control. It's just an illusion that gets in the way. It gets in the way of fucking living, your fucking life.
Yeah. And this is the more you get lost in it, the more you try to run from it, the more you try to compensate for it, the deeper it gets. That's really what it is. And it the alternative again is to let go. But then we have to deal with what we feel. It's like, I don't feel like I'm enough. Just let that pass. Just let that pass. That's really all it is. It's just when the thought pops up, I don't feel like I'm enough. What an interesting thought. Right? Not therefore it's the truth because I feel like it, but what an interesting thought. And we do this shit all the time when we're in a state of clarity. Like all of a sudden it'll dawn on us, oh, maybe Jack's angry at me. You think about it for a second. That's kind of Jack's problem. And you let it go. And that's it. Like we do that shit all the time, but we don't recognize that often we don't. We hold on to that thought because it made us feel a certain way. We react to that thought because it made us feel a certain way rather than question the way it made us feel, rather than question our belief in that thought. This is something that we learn very young about, kids who are bullies. Like they're not bullies because of you. They're not bullies because of you. This is the same with thoughts. Like they're not bullies. They're just things that you're taking too seriously. That's just their nature. It's their nature to compare. It doesn't mean that it has anything to do with you. It's not fucking personal. You are not the result of the comparison. That is simply its way of figuring out where the fuck you are amidst all of this shit. That's all the brain's trying to figure out, And so it's just recognizing that over and over and over again. And then unfortunately, the only way to do that currently is just to keep running into that fucking brick wall, is to keep committing to thought like it's going to get you somewhere and then being miserable as a result. It's like, oh, I'm going to follow this path. My life sucks. Okay, fuck that. I'm going to try and find another one. I'm going to follow this path. Fuck. And that's just over and over and over and over until finally you're like, I'm not following any more fucking paths. I'm going to stand here until I figure out what the fuck is going on. Right. And that's it. And you just stand in your life here and now and pay attention and look and listen for the very first fucking time without some knee-jerk response to run down a path because you're afraid or trying to be more. What you're looking for is where you are. It's where you are. It's not found in trying to be more. It's not found in trying to get somewhere. You will get somewhere. You will be more in terms of just accumulation of experience. But you yourself are not valued by that shit. You can't be. Your potential in this moment is to be this moment. And that will always be the case. The only thing that changes over time is how that unfolds. That's all. It has nothing to do with your value. If you want to put attention and time into something, you will see that value unfold. Or you can sit there thinking about whether or not you can do it and decrease the amount of attention and time. And that's the only reason you don't see more potential unfold. Frankly, you're in the way. You're in the way. And if you just shut up and do it, you would be amazed what you're capable of. And this is the one thing that is true with almost every successful person, everybody who's ever built something from the ground up. If you listen to their interviews, this is normally what they'll say. Just shut up and do it. Just do it. Stop thinking about yourself, because everybody else who's thinking about themselves, they're not going to do it. They're going to tell themselves they can't. They're going to quit before they make it. They're going to do all of that shit to get in their own way. And the only people who don't are the ones who are audacious enough to say, fuck it, I don't know. And find out.
Yeah, the amount of energy that you get back when you're not constantly thinking about yourself is unreal. Like, you can just kind of bounce around, bop around. I feel like I look like Ray right now, kind of bobbing around, bouncing around, like, and it hit me. And this is just an assumption of anything, but it hit me, and for some reason, I was like in your office, like in like seeing things from your perspective, and it was like I was experiencing things without thinking so much. And it's just an assumption and my idea of you, whatever, but it was interesting because I pictured being at a computer or your computer, and they're just like doing something, banging something out, and then just like getting up, not thinking about anything necessarily, like walking into your kitchen, like getting something, and there's just not being like as much of a dialogue. And I was like, oh fuck, that could be.
That
You
is.
can like
That's exactly what it is, and it's interesting you bring that up, and I'll tell you, okay. So here's the thing: my default has changed in terms of what I pay attention to. See, once upon a time, if I was sitting in my room or sitting in the office like this, I would have went, I should think about what to do next. Now, as soon as I feel myself thinking, I default to feeling the room. So I'm cutting the priority of the thinking out because it's not important. Like thoughts will pop up. I don't need to dwell on them. I don't even have to worry about them. Right. But I default to just feeling where I am. And that's why it's so goddamn quiet.
yeah, and it changes everything. And it might have been after that episode, because yeah, and it was funny though, because I was like, oh fuck, and or maybe it was on my drive, because I was realizing, oh, I can just do that. I can just be where I'm at, do the thing I'm doing, shut the fuck up, stop thinking, mulling, contemplating, judging, and just do shit. Just do shit. Not with an idea of where it's going, what's happening, blah, 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 blah. And it's so interesting how that is like, that's it. Like that's a possibility, but it's like there's so much and also so little in the way of that simultaneously. Cause especially given just environmental factors and growing up, and you know, I like the way I lived my whole life was literally thinking back, it was like doing something for the next thing. Like like to an extreme degree, like doing things I didn't even want to do to get to the next thing. Like that hit me hard last
Yay for
week.
school.
Holy shit. And it's built, yeah, I mean that's a great point. Like it's built in, and you've mentioned that, like how it's interesting just with my journey, because I didn't have, the family shit, the friend shit. It was very much like the system, like how we have built in that mechanism of control to get to things. And I, all I know is my experience, but I see people, I look around, I see the rigidity in society, the stress, the striving to be something. And yeah, I felt like, oh, I felt that to an extreme degree, but I am very much, it's not a uncommon experience at all. It's like everyone goes through this fucking system, this fucked system of getting to the next thing. And Alan Watts has that little bit about how you go to kindergarten to get to first grade, you go to elementary school to get to middle school, you go to middle school to get to high school to get to college to get a job to support your family to be supported when you're older, work to retire, and then you get to this point where you think, in your midlife, thinking like, wait a second, I kept striving to get to this thing, and it's like, oh man, it almost makes me emotional to think about that. Like, oh my god, our whole life we can spend for the next thing, for the next thing, for the next thing, till we get to, and it's like that fucking retirement at the end of the road when we're too old to do shit, and it's like, well, and sure, you go on, do things along the way, you have a good time, but there's this underlying baseline, I'm getting somewhere. Then we fucking die, dude. Like, oh my God. That is brutal. Brutal to have an underlying striving for your entire life to the grave. And then, oh, fuck. And then we think we're going to heaven after. Oh my God. And we do the whole thing. Oh, no. Oh my God, that's why we're okay with it. We think we're going to a place.
Correct. Why
Oh,
do you think that belief's so important to us?
oh no.
Oh
Oh my
yeah.
God. It's
But that's it. That's why we've actually been passed along the idea. Like, it's an old Christian belief that life is suffering, right? It's an old religious belief that, life and suffering go hand in hand. That's why we have the grace of God. That's why we have the afterlife, the reward that we're promised for going through this the hard way. And it's like, but we're doing it to ourselves. And we've lost that state of mind where we recognize that that's what we've been doing. We've lost that state of mind where it's not even a state of mind. We've just lost that sensitivity I was talking about. Like, my daughter continuously surprises me. And it's only because the only thing that is different in my daughter's life compared to my life or anybody else's life that I know, including her friends that go to school and whatnot, is frankly that she gets more time to self-reflect. She gets more time to herself where nobody's asking anything of her. No, there's no demands. She gets to decide if she wants to think about something or when she wants to think about something, or if she just wants to sit and do whatever the fuck it is she's doing. And because of that, she's gaining a sensitivity for what it feels to be herself. And that is changing how she interacts with the world. It's changing how she prioritizes her life. It's changing how she has relationships with other people, because it's about being fucking here. It's about being who you are. But how can we develop that sensitivity if we're never doing it? If we're never doing it in our whole life, we're taught not to. We're always taught to go to the next thing. What do you want to be when you're a grown up? What do you want to be when you grow up? How fucked up is that? Right? Like, I don't know. Alive? How about alive? Can that be the priority? Happy? Happy. I want to be happy. I want to be in less conflict. I don't want to be asking people fucking questions like that. Is that a good answer?
It's funny because I did a little Q&A on Instagram yesterday, and someone asked me that. It might have been tongue in cheek. I think they had asked me things before that were not along those lines, but I said myself, like, that was my response. Like, it's so interesting just how built in that striving is. Like, how built in our becoming something. I'm becoming something. And I'm starting to gain way more of an understanding and a sensitivity as to why people freak the fuck out about religious content videos. Like, everything is weighing on that. Like, everything. I
The
told
immortal
someone,
soul.
oh my God. Oh, it's so fucked. Because I told, and I get it, even with, you know, like, my family, who I love very much, they're very open minded, but there's still the, holding on to heaven. There's a heaven, there's a God. So I told someone one of my jokes, and they didn't find it as funny as I thought they would. And I was like confused for a sec, but now I am even just in, like, in the last 10 minutes, this conversation we've had, I'm like, oh fuck. Oh fuck. That's why there's so much aggression. And I put a couple of those jokes on our YouTube on shorts, and there were some
I saw
people,
that.
oh my God, someone said uh make like a Islam joke next or something, and someone responded to them, and they were like, if he ever makes a joke about my prophet, I'll beat him. And I like Jesus too, so he better be careful. Like, oh my God. Like, that's why, Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, like, holy shit.
Dude, it wasn't that long ago that like French cartoonist had his head cut off for drawing the Prophet Islam. Like, it wasn't that long ago, because it's against the religion to draw any image of Muhammad, right? Like, and again, like, It's just the fact that we're terrified. See, I kind of look at it this way. And it's really important to remember this when you're talking to religious people, especially. Okay. You're talking to somebody who is leaning very heavily on a crutch, and you're coming over and threatening that crutch. That's what that is. That is that response. And they'll swing that fucking thing at you. They'll ask everybody else, you believe in these crutches too, right? And they'll defend themselves. And it's just because they really want that crutch. They really want it because they don't believe they can walk without it. They think they're broken. And what's worse is that the crutch is actually telling them they're broken. The crutch is actually telling them they're broken, that they're sinners, that they're not God, that they have to do something to earn God's fucking grace, that there's a checklist they have to live up to. Like the crutch itself is a fucking dick.
I'm like, oh God
I feel you,
damn
man.
it.
I get it. This is one of the reasons I'm so
Oh,
goddamn driven in what I do, is because it's sad. It's sad and it's fucking unnecessary. It's unnecessary for us to fucking languish in our own misery like this just because we're so lost in self-absorption that we developed an entire goddamn culture around it. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. We live in the Lord of the fucking Flies. Like, we really are all in this together, pretending that we're adults while we act like fucking children. And we're suffering. We're burning the goddamn forest down around us as a result. And it's unnecessary. And it's only because we keep waiting for somebody to be the adult in the room instead of being it ourselves. I was saying this to somebody yesterday, that I think the most useful thing I've ever decided in my life was that there may not be any gurus left. There may not be anyone left who's clear and aware and actually able to see what the fuck is going on. And if that's true, then it's just on me. And that's enough. That's enough, because at least there's me. And each of us have to take that fucking stance, because I might be full of shit. You might be full of shit. Anyone who's listening to this right now has to understand it might just be you. Maybe you're going to see the thing that all of a sudden sets you free and causes a ripple that inspires others to do so. Maybe you're going to be the first one to be an adult in this goddamn room. Don't assume it's me because I'm fucking goofy. Don't assume it's Andrew because you don't fucking know us. All you know is you. And that's enough. This is why I love that 9 Inch Nails song. You are the reason that I am not afraid. Because all of the potential that we need is in each and every one of us. But it's up to you to take on the responsibility.
dude. Oh, it's like I'm feeling just a combo of freedom, responsibility, sadness in a sense, like seeing this for more of what it is and why, like why we hold on to all of these things so tightly, and we've gotten so rigid and stressed and like, oh my God, it's unreal. And the reason for, you know, the judgment or anything, like someone judges someone, like for being, if you're free in yourself, guaranteed you're getting judged by insecure, rigid, stiff people. Like guarantee the thought of like there's like a busy sidewalk near me right now, and this morning I was walking on it and just like I was listening to music and like dancing basically, like not crazy intensely, but just, and I was, it's just interesting that like no one's doing that, like no one's doing that ever, like people are walking and like looking like and it wasn't like they were looking at me necessarily. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in general, like we walk around concerned, frightened, afraid, worried, thinking about ourself and or something to do with us. Not even if it's an immediate thing, but just, oh my God, the 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 weight of that. It's like I'm seeing it as this suppression, like this just compression and just this collective sort of compression, but the fucking beauty in it is you got you. As you said, like, there might not you said that before. I didn't know what the fuck you were talking. There's so many things that, like, over time it starts to make sense, and now I just hear something, I'm like, I don't know what that means, but it'll come around eventually. But that realization, like, there may not be any gurus left. It may just be you. So do it for you. Be it. Like, you have the potential. And that was another thing I realized in the car is like, holy fuck, if I'm out of my own way, like, the fucking potential I have. And even it's like, because part of me feels like I just not woke up in, like, the spiritual fucking sense, but just, like, was kind of like a I don't want to say it, like, kind of like a vegetable, and then it's like all of a sudden it's like,
Your own mini apocalypse.
oh man, yeah, yeah, and it woke up to, like, oh, I'm in this. It's kind of a cool thing to be waking up. I have, like, the social media stuff, got a podcast to talk about, got the
Community.
community, like,
Remember,
all
I
these.
told you about 4 or 5 months ago, there's going to be a point where all of a sudden you're going to stop going through your shit and you're going to look around and go, how the fuck did I end up here? And that's what it is, because you've been growing something that reflects your journey this entire time. All of us are. The people who are listening to this, people who are commenting right now, the people who join us on Patreon, this is all reflective of the journey that you're on. And what's beautiful about that is that eventually, once you stop pretending you're on a journey, you stop, you look around, and everything's been growing around you as a result of your growth. And it's heartwarming. I find myself surrounded by people who are just being themselves to the best of their degree, with the honest intention of not asking anything of anyone else. I live in another level of heaven right now, and it's unbelievable, because it's not that there's a lack of work, it's not that there's a lack of shit to deal with, it's just that there's a lack of concern about it. There's a lack of judgment of myself for going through it. And so it's really just what it is. And this is something that we've been growing. We're coming up on 2 years very shortly of doing Dualistic Unity. We're coming up to our 8th retreat. And why do those retreats go so well? Because frankly, people are making something out of it. They're taking those moments where they can just be themselves, and they're sinking into that feeling and then carrying that with them for the rest of their lives. And you and I don't get to see how that plays out. We don't fucking need to. We don't need to, because it's about the quality of each and every ripple. We have 2 minutes left for this live stream. I want to mention very quickly, we are having another mini retreat, October 5th. We already have 2 people coming to this. A couple of people have expressed interest, but the tickets are available. October 5th to October 9th, Vancouver, Canada. You can find the tickets at dualisticunity.com. There are supporter benefits or discounts. Tier 3 saves $350. Tier 2 saves $150. Tier 1 saves $50. If you can make it to this retreat, it's going to be awesome. There's a hot tub, pool table, foosball, ping pong, which I am particularly fucking stoked about. And everybody who's listening to this, understand the reason that we focus so much on play is because that in itself is a fucking skill. We really do hold on to this idea that unless this is fucking miserable, I'm not learning or growing. That's horseshit. You learned and you grew faster when you were a kid and playing than you ever have since. Because you weren't in the fucking way. There is nothing more transformative at one of these retreats than somebody learning how to play pool for the first time or playing a game for the first time and realizing nobody's keeping score. Nobody's keeping score. Nobody gives a shit who wins. It's just an opportunity to spend time here and now together as yourself, complete and whole, with other people who are complete and fucking whole. So you can carry that feeling with you as you move forward. Not as a concept, not as an idea, not as something you need to believe in, but as something that you've actually felt and stayed in for long enough to appreciate. That is why these retreats are so important. That's why we do them. So if you can make it, definitely do. Dualisticunity.com. Again, the details are there. If you have any questions, reach out for us. This Vancouver mini retreat is the last one of this year. After this, we're just doing the Netherlands 9-day full retreat. That retreat is going to be fucking incredible. But if you haven't been to one of our retreats, I do encourage you to come out to this mini retreat. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to give you an opportunity to see what this is really all about if you haven't joined us yet. And if you have joined us previously, get out to the retreat again, because there's always more opportunity for you to be a ripple for everybody else who is coming there for the first time. So I'm going to wrap up here. This has been a lot of fun. I'm going to pass it over to Andrew to shut us down for the day. But Andrew, it's good to see you, man. Definitely enjoying the clarity on your face.
Good to see you too, man. Holy shit. And like last thing I'll wrap up here, but even that, like the play thing, like so much of my life was, well, what is this getting me? Where is this getting me? What is this getting me to? Oh, it's not getting me to anything? Well, that's not worth doing. Like straight up, almost everything I did was like for another thing. Like there was always an ulterior motive. Like I'm not saying like most of the time. I'm saying like always. If it didn't get me somewhere, mean something about me, build this thing, it wasn't worth doing. Like that, like fucking baseball for me became that. And I'm realizing now, like that's where it was when I started going through like extreme nerves and like shit. It was when I started trying to play college, like thinking about playing in college. Like that was the decision, and all because it shifted. It wasn't for the sake anymore. It's like the season before, the season after completely changed until I got to a point where I was like about to quit, which was like another year after. I went from like loving it, being really good, to like, this kind of sucks. I fucking hate this. And I basically decided I was going to quit, and I was like, I'll give it one more try. And it was that letting go that allowed me to, keep going. There was still variations of that, but the rigidity and just the fucking the madness in us coming from opposite ends of the spectrum, like kind of covering the ground of the rigidity of different stories, different things, like, from coming from extreme discomfort to extreme comfort. Neither of them are the fucking answer. Obviously, the discomfort, it's like maybe that's more obvious to see, but like the comfort isn't the fucking answer either. Comfort is not freedom. Comfort is not freedom, and is just another fucking prison, and is not the thing that you think that it is. There is an intense rigidity, stress, lack of freedom in comfort. And I don't know if enough people really understand that. Even those who are comfortable don't even understand what they're fucking missing. But anyway, I know we're at time, so
Yeah,
this has been a lot of fun.
But yeah, it helps to remember that the struggle for freedom is not freedom itself. The struggle for self-awareness, as I said in a recent video, can become an addictive way to avoid the responsibility of self-awareness. You can actually get so caught up in trying to be something that you don't spend any time just being it. So that all said, we're going to wrap up here. If anybody can join us on Patreon, please do. Patreon.com/dualistic-unity. There is a 7-day free trial available for a tier 2 membership, which means you can chat with us 5 days a week. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.